AI is not going to replace your job, but somebody using AI will. Beyond the efficiency gains, what's the most significant long-term impact on a company's sales culture when they successfully adopt AI?
I think the most important impact it's going to have on sales culture is elevating a seller to a higher level of thinking and analysis. Because when you get rid of all these other things, all that's left is the ability for the seller to enhance their skill set when it comes to managing those relationships. I think, again, no matter whether you're in medical sales or in SaaS, etc., a lot of sales is relationship based, but there's certain level of sophistication of how you manage those relationships.
You can't replace part of the brain. Like,
you treat them the same.
Source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the puppets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the $90 billion company. They had help up high, a lot of things.
The state of medtech with your host, Omar M. Khateeb.
Hello and welcome everyone to Closing Smarter in MedTech, the AI prescription for high-performance selling. I'm Chris Kosrow, Showpad's Director of New Business Sales for North America, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my friend and mentor in the MedTech industry, Omar M. Khateeb. A lot of folks on this webinar probably know Omar, but he's the founder of Khateeb & Co. They're a leading marketing agency helping MedTech startups drive adoption, raise capital, and grow their commercial presence through strategic storytelling and digital media. He's also the creator and host of the State of MedTech podcast, the industry's #1 podcast for surgical innovation, where they feature conversations with founders, investors, and clinicians shaping the future of healthcare. Omar, I'm really excited to have you. I know you're an AI savant. I'll share a super quick story, but earlier this year, Omar and I were sitting together at AUA out in Las Vegas and trying to plan a customer dinner sort of ad hoc. And before I even got Google on my phone, he's got ChatGPT up and he's looking at, okay, the Venetian, nice dinner, good clients. And within a matter of a minute, he had a reservation to Delmonico's where we had a really nice dinner. So Omar, it's a pleasure to be able to discuss such an exciting topic with you today. What are you most excited about as it relates to the potential for AI in MedTech?
Hey, Chris, it's great to see you as well. You can hear me okay, right?
Loud and clear.
Fantastic. I don't have my usual mic and camera set up for most of my audience that are used to that, so you get to see me on my backup camera now, but it will make it work. The thing that I'm most excited about is the potential for not only the applications of AI in the medical application space in terms of how we help patients, etc., but more on the sales and operations side. I think that the industry for the longest time was pretty manual and outdated in what it's doing. And I think for how complex and difficult medical sales is, AI is just such a fantastic tool to help sellers and marketers do even more. Even internally at my own agency, I'll make an announcement here. We're going through a name change currently to really focus on how we use AI internally for our clients and for ourselves. We're changing the name to marketcraft.ai. So we focused on engineering and crafting markets, and AI is a big part of that. And so I'm really excited. The way I think about it, Chris, is that it's like 100 years ago, we had the Industrial Revolution. We had Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, and Rockefeller. And we're kind of going through our own revolution right now. We're at the turn of the century. This is like our generation's big, massive global revolution. And so it's a really exciting time to be alive.
It sure is. Wow, 4 minutes in and we have a big announcement. Thanks for sharing that with everyone, Omar.
Yeah, there we go. Only on Showpad.
Well, before we jump in, some super quick housekeeping items. So I know the question we always get, yes, the session will be recorded and it will be shared with all registrants and attendees afterwards. So if you had any colleagues that you wanted to attend this event with you and they weren't able to make it, good news, you'll be able to share this. As a participant in the webinar, you are muted. So please share comments in the chat and submit questions during the Q&A part. And finally, there will be an interactive element coming up very soon where you can take a 2-minute assessment to find out how mature your business is at enabling sellers with AI and what to do about it. So there's a QR code. There will also be a link. So anyone comfortable, get your smartphone ready. Otherwise, we'll give you a link in the chat that you can navigate towards. All right, well, let's get into it. I think the question everyone came here to answer is, how can our company successfully adopt AI? This question is at the forefront of every boardroom discussion today, and forward-thinking sales leaders really see AI's true potential. automating the busy work that sellers are doing so that they can focus on what AI can't replace, which is that relationship-driven and consultative selling. This stat's really interesting to me. 91% of businesses are already using AI to support decision-making throughout their buying process. That means from the very first conversation they're having with your sellers, they're turning up with more options, stronger opinions, and higher expectations than ever before. Thankfully, commercial leaders are responding quickly as well. So 87% say that they're either actively adopting or preparing for AI. I trust everyone on this call is at least falling in that camp of either adopting or preparing for. But I do think we'll see as we get into the assessment that there's probably a lot more preparing for than there actually is adopting out in the market right now. Omar, how are you seeing AI reshape both the buying process and the role of the seller in MedTech?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, look, I've spoken to a lot of like larger strategics like the J&Js of the world who haven't like fully adopted just because, they're large companies, they have their own processes, but they need to start moving on it because our own customers, physicians, hospital systems, they're tech savvy and they're doing their own research, they're using their own data, and more importantly, applying AI, even in email replies. And so they don't also want like generic pitches. I think because of AI and the ability to personalize things, to really break things at a very high level, we're seeing that expectation being met in the marketplace. So even with some of our internal clients, when they do communications with physicians, we've trained like some AI models to help them with customer service. And so these physicians are getting these very in-depth, well thought through emails on, technical issues, procedural insights, etc. And so now they're getting exposure to that level of engagement from companies that are using AI. They're expecting that same level of service and engagement from other companies. And then when the companies don't adopt AI and their sellers and marketers are not using these things, there's just a massive, massive difference. And again, that's a big benefit for people who are adopting AI and a huge disadvantage for, the companies that are out there that are not using AI at all.
Yeah, well, I think you've done a really nice job kind of teasing out what we're going to showcase next, which is sort of the 4 quadrants where we're seeing folks in the medtech industry typically fall. And so along that bottom axis or the x-axis, if you will, that's where technological sophistication really comes into play. So do we have, the right tools in the business to help support an AI transformation? Is it, relatively simple or generic things like ChatGPT or Gemini, or, even some of the, Agentforce and things like that are helping with broader business context? Or do we have some of the purpose-built for commercial tools that are available in the market right now? And then along the y-axis, that's where the kind of human adoption or human readiness of AI starts to fall. So there's a lot of orgs that have a lot of individuals on their team that are really, really excited about the potential for AI, but there are some that have given their team tools and the team's not really adopting them. And so we're gonna kind of talk about how to overcome some of those hurdles.
Yeah, I think this is by the way, I think this is a really good place to start. I'm so happy that Showpad put this kind of an assessment together. So I think a lot of times, a lot of organizations, they'll rush to adopt technology to do a lot of these things. But first, we really have to do sort of a gut check internally to say like, okay, like what's the level of sophistication of our workforce with technology? What's the level of adoption? Because if you don't know that, right, you're going to either waste a lot of time, you're going to waste a lot of money, or both. And so I think this is like such a great place to start. And again, I'm not surprised that Showpad thought of doing this. Of all the SaaS companies out there, they're trying to push AI adoption. I think Showpad is the very first one to say like, hey, let's actually help the market and our customers figure out like where exactly are they? Because if you don't know where you are, it's very difficult to manage that and to drive forward like in terms of what success looks like.
Well, thank you for that, Omar. And obviously the title of the webinar is the AI prescription, but like any good clinician, we can't really prescribe until we've diagnosed. So now is your chance to plot the exact steps your business needs to take to successfully enable sellers with AI by finding out whether you're an optimizer, an operator, a believer, or a spectator. So you can now take the 2-minute assessment via either the QR code on the screen or via the link in the chat that we're posting right now. Not only will this help you get the most out of the rest of this session because you'll kind of know where you stand relative to some of the tactics and suggestions we'll be suggesting, but you will also get tailored recommendations sent to your inbox. It's just 10 simple questions, so it's super quick to complete. Again, should be about 2 minutes.
Yeah, and everybody go ahead and definitely do that right now. Again, we're gonna wait for people to do that so we can get some live discussion in the chat. But if you're listening to this on replay and you're in the car, and you're listening to this on the State of MedTech, just check the show notes below, and we're gonna put a link to this at the very top.
Great call, Omar. Thank you for that. And as you move through the assessment, you'll see that each question addresses a key component of your organization's AI maturity. So from leadership buy-in and seller effectiveness to tech adoption and content personalization, you'll rate each on a scale of 1 to 5 on where your business stands today. I would encourage everyone. I know there's probably a lot of like 3s or you're kind of thinking you're falling in the 3 on a lot of these. I would err on the side of conservative as much as possible, because that'll really empower the recommendations that you get to take it a next level if you're feeling like you're pretty in the middle.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Chris. And again, I think this is really going to be an eye-opening assessment for most leaders. And the main thing is that, we always like to believe our team is, doing great and doing a great job and everything. But really be honest with yourself and just imagine that, let's say a board member or, a commercial leader you respect comes in and assesses your team. What will they really find? And me personally, in my own team, as AI heavy as we are, we actually had to do this a couple weeks ago. And actually, I'm going to have everybody take the Showpad assessment as well, because I realized that there's a lot of high level awareness for AI technology within my own team and the models that we train for clients. But at the same time, internally, there's some processes that my team isn't deploying AI tools. And I'm like, guys, why aren't you, even if it's a brainstorm, why aren't you using this model or that model and stuff? So it's really important to kind of constantly assess this,
Thanks for that, Omar. And you'll see your results will include 3 specific sections about your sales organization's stage of AI maturity. So that's a breakdown of where you currently stand and why, what business as usual future would look like if you stay on your current path, and a game plan with 5 actionable steps to boost your business impact. If you do need any additional clarification about any of the questions, let us know in the chat so that we can discuss, or even for any more general questions, you can hold it for the Q&A portion toward the end.
Yeah, Chris, something I wanted to mention is that, I see medical sales and sales as a whole very much like a great soccer team versus a basketball team. If you look at the NBA, an entire team can be carried by 1 or just 2 key players, right? But in soccer, because you have a much larger team, the best teams are actually based on how good their worst players are, And I think that as a sales team and as an organization, you should really think about it as well, which is you can't rely on your entire organization to be carried by a few key star people. That's not how you drive a scalable organization. It really is going to be based on where's the average person at, right, in comparison to their peers in the competition, and then even more so, what's the lowest performing person at?
Well said, Omar. Good analogy.
That was on the fly too. That was good, right?
I'm impressed. For everyone still working through the assessment, no need to rush if you're still answering some questions, but I think everyone should be about finished up by now. So we're going to move on to the 4 possible results. So Omar, let's start by looking at the companies that are sort of starting with a complete blank slate when it comes to AI-enabled sales. Now, again, if you're on this webinar, you're at least part of the 87% of folks that is preparing for AI adoption, but the spectators, or this category, have not taken action quite yet. And what we see is a lot of times delaying the realization of the potential that AI could have is, characterized by a company culture that is a little bit averse to change. They might have a really legacy tech infrastructure, which is hard to build on because of its complexity. And leadership may not see a clear path to value. Data quality might be a known but unaddressed issue. And it really just becomes kind of easiest to do nothing, at least for now, while everyone kind of waits to see what the true impact of AI will be. Although fully aware of outdated techniques and the fact that there is a way that sellers could be spending their time better, more effectively, there's still a lot of time spent each week doing manual busy work and limiting the amount of direct conversations they can have with customers. This leads to burnout of sellers, often causing them to leave and even take their expertise with them. So Omar, when we think about the spectators, what would your advice be to the businesses that face these challenges, and what should they do about it?
Yeah. So number one is, I think this is probably the most common thing in medtech is being a spectator for a variety of things. And it makes sense because psychologically, if you think about any industry, you sort of adapt to the psychology and persona of your customers. And so for us, our customers are physicians. Physicians are dogmatic. They're all conservative. I know we think about clinical adopters, but for the most part, a physician goes through training and everything and sticks to a protocol and guideline and doesn't deviate much from that, right? And our industry is very much like that as well. So this sort of like wait and see mindset is a real risk. And the real cost essentially is not just inefficiency, but moving slowly and losing ground, right? That's the biggest thing. I remember there's few medical teams that I think of that got stuck in this quadrant where, very specifically reps were, first of all, like spending hours and hours manually doing things like updating the CRM, manually doing emails after calls, and this sort of administrative burden was like so high, they actually didn't have time to prospect or follow up on opportunities. Like if you think about it, that's like one of the most important parts of a seller's time is on a daily basis, their activity, which is prospecting and following up. And so if they're spending all this time with this administrative stuff, even thinking about like, what kind of email should I send? So they have to go do research manual, everything. These are the things that when compounded over time cause somebody to, let's say, miss quota. And then when you have a deal rep or quarterly review, this is when they'll do things like blaming marketing or blaming that there's very low market awareness, right? When actually the real issue is right now in their workflow. And before you didn't have a way to solve this, now you do actually. So if you're here, I would even say like you're not just like a spectator like in the sidelines. You're kind of like a spectator in the past, right? There's a real consequence to not adapting and moving forward, because the other side of it is if we think about the speed of innovation and the speed of changes in the market 10, 20 years ago, it would take like 5 or 10 years for real change to seed in the market. Now, just look at how things have changed just in the last 2 or 3 years, right? And so the market, your customers, they're not just standing idle as well. They're moving along with that because it has such a strong pull.
Yeah, well said. And in preparing for this webinar, I found a really interesting framework by this lady named Stephanie Boyer. She's a PhD professor and researcher in AI sales, learning, and performance. And so she calls it the SAFE framework, a really, really easy acronym to remember and to think about how you want to approach AI evaluations, which is safely, especially in this space. So the S, and I'm sorry for the folks on the webinar, there's not a visual for this, but bear with me. The S in SAFE stands for solve problems worth solving. So I think that's sort of the key component. And what I see a lot of times happen sort of in the market, my team and I talk to probably at least 20 med techs per week that are either, startups, commercial stage, or even some of those established strategics like Omar was talking about. And there's a lot of questions around just like, what can your AI do for me? What use cases do you have for AI? And I love my prospects, don't get me wrong, but that's the wrong way to think about it. You need to think about what problems do I have that AI could solve for you. You can't let the tool dictate the problem, or you're going to end up with that really poor human adoption. So some of the things Omar mentioned, like we're spending way too much time updating CRM, or we're spending way too much time trying to remember what we said about when we were face-to-face with a clinician and what we need to include in our follow-up. And those are things that AI can really easily and safely take off your plate for you, giving you more time to focus on that prospecting, focus on more customer interactions. So that's the S in SAFE. A is for assess. Do we have the resources and the data to capitalize on this use case? So I think there's a major emphasis on, what AI does really, really well is compile a ton of data and turn it into actionable insights. And so does your organization even have the data needed to feed an AI model? Do they have the resources required to pull that data and to merge that data into an AI model? Those are really, really critical questions to ask before you go headfirst into an AI use case. The F is for focus on functionality. So, does it work how and where we need it to? Great example in our space is, AI is a very, very Wi-Fi or internet connective dependent tool. Your sellers are out in the field working off their phones, going into ORs where they have no service, going into hospital basements where they have no service. So how can AI meet me before I lose connection, as an example? And will this simplify or will it complicate our work? Will our users actually use it? These are all really important questions when you think about the functionality of an AI use case that you'll want to investigate before, again, pursuing one. And last but not least, E is for ensure data safety. So if you really need to protect your data like the gold that it is, that means no open networks, especially in your space. You need an enterprise tool that's going to protect your data, have a closed system, and not train on one another's data as it relates to what you're feeding it. So thank you for letting me on that tangent, Omar, but we'll move on to the next quadrant, which is the believers. So this stage is where, candidly, we've seen a lot of the MedTech folks that I was just referring to, Omar. So obviously they're talking to us for a reason. A lot of times their sellers are already embracing tools like ChatGPT or Copilot to complete some tasks faster. There might even also be enthusiasm from senior leadership to scale productivity across their sales org. However, the kind of ad hoc usage or, the couple people that are using it a ton and everybody else isn't, leads to, a risk of unmanaged data or even potential security vulnerabilities. So generic AI tools, they might produce small or localized productivity gains, but if the impact isn't easy to measure, best practices become difficult to scale, and ultimately you're going to be kind of stuck in this, high adoption of a few folks without true enterprise value from your AI investment. Omar, how are you seeing this sort of individual enthusiasm play out across the industry?
Yeah, I have a great example of this, actually. So there are two sort of flavors of this. There's the enterprise level, which is where a company decides, hey, we're going to invest in something like Showpad, right? And then there's something where a lot of medical salespeople, they're actually pretty pragmatic about just saying, I'm going to use things, right? And so this started off by reps, let's say, using ChatGPT and Gemini and everything. Then there's some really interesting and, in my opinion, really great tools out there. One of them that's specifically for reps is called repprep.ai. It's specifically where they pull clinical and commercial data on physicians. The reps use it to do their sales call planning, right? And then more importantly, identify if I'm going to go talk to this doctor, what should I focus on? The problem, though, is that because the organization hasn't adopted things like this, and more importantly, they don't have anything on the back end, these reps will adopt these kind of things, and then it's not widely used because in the organization hasn't had enterprise level human adoption, right? And so the organization hasn't, invested in things like Showpad Assist or something where the reps actually have operational AI where it's helping them with their call planning, it's helping them with their follow-up, more importantly, automating these tasks because, getting all this information into CRMs takes a lot of time. And so the things that sellers love to do, they don't get to actually do it. This is the one thing that I really love about Showpad Assist and the agentic AI that you guys develop is that it actually automates everything except for the parts that the seller really wants to do, which is meeting with customers and everything. And that's really how we should think about AI, especially agentic AI, right? Is how do we start automating all these things that are not so fun? And I think that the other way I can relate this is we do this in the clinical space, right? If you think about surgical robotics, I started my career in robotic spine at Missouri Robotics. We were essentially using robotics to improve kind of a boring area of the case that surgeons really didn't care much about. So that way the surgeons can take their time, their efforts, their skill set and focus on the most important parts of the case. And I think that's the important part about technology. And again, to kind of go back to what we talked about earlier, is that you'll have some rogue reps who will do these things. They'll buy ChatGPT, or a lot of reps are on their own paying for something like RepPrep out of their pocket. And so what's going to end up happening is that you're going to have the stratification of these top performing reps, and you're not going to know why they're doing so well. When in reality, if you invest and adopt as an organization, you can level set everybody, right? Versus just, having service reps who are struggling and saying, oh, they're bad sellers, when in reality, it's probably because your processes are so bad, you haven't had any enterprise adoption. and they're spending all this time not selling.
Yeah, amen. And I love that you brought up Rep Prep, and I think Eddie is actually in the audience for this webinar.
Do you know Rep Prep?
He's probably smiling ear to ear, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a great example of, an
Eddie's in the audience. He needs to send me a fruit basket for Congo. By the way, just full disclosure, I have like no affiliation with them except that I like the guys and I like what they're doing. So
yeah. No, I think in all honesty, I was planning to mention them a bit in the optimizer section. So Eddie was going to get his shine one way or another. But let's move to kind of the opposite end of the coin, which is where we have folks that are investing really heavily in enabling sellers with sophisticated AI, but are seeing stalled momentum as the actual seller adoption is low. So, the technology you've invested in might be capable. So think some of those like enterprise level ChatGPT licenses or org-wide Gemini, whatever that might be. But, if sellers aren't feeling it and trusting it in the context of their daily lives, like using it out in the field when they need it most, this means your AI investment might be a sunk cost, not a competitive advantage. So sellers might remain inefficient and burdened by administrative tasks that AI should be handling for them proactively. Like one of the things I think about is, yes, any AI can help me write a great follow-up email if I feed it like the context that I want that follow-up email to say. But how meaningful is that actually, as it relates to me still having to remember, I saw, 8 docs today. I need to follow up with all of them. What did I talk about with each? Okay, now AI helped me write the email. Like we're still not going to do that unless the AI is actually meeting me where I'm at with saying, hey, you spoke to this person today. Here's what you spoke to them about. Here's a sample follow-up email. What tweaks do you want to make, right? So it's a big difference between sort of how in the flow of a seller's work the AI actually is. Omar, I know I gave kind of an example there, but how have you seen this play out in the med dev space where, you've got folks investing in enterprise grade AI technologies, but the human adoption is still really low?
Yeah, great question. I like to think of this as kind of like the horsepower exists, but the car isn't being driven, right? So like there's no point in like buying, a Bugatti and letting it just sit in the garage, right? I think a lot of times we see this not so much at the Fortune 500 strategic level. We see this at the mid-cap level. Companies that are doing anywhere from like 50 to, let's say, above 100 million in revenue, but below $1 billion, right? They've adopted and they invest in these things. But then you have this problem where the reps are resisting because the tech isn't exactly purpose-built for their workflow. I think a great example of this, and the best example, is like the CRM. Right? We all know the value of a CRM, but there's not a single rep in Showpad or in any medical sales organization that came home and said, hey, thank God for Salesforce or thank God for HubSpot. Like I hit quota because of the CRM. It just doesn't exist. And so a lot of times when new technology is being adopted, the Salesforce feels like, oh, this is new technology that management and or marketing is adopting so they can see what I'm doing and manage me, right? And so it's very rare up until now with AI where sellers actually have a technology that they're going to feel the dramatic effects of it, right? But I think part of that is the education and training of them and for them to understand, like, here's very directly, very simply, how this is going to directly make your life easier. I think going back to like Showpad Assist, I don't see it as like, it's not a generic and Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong here. It's not essentially a generic AI tool. It's an AI agent that's specifically built for field sellers so that things are done on their behalf, right? I think the problem when you have sellers who adopt, let's say, internally in my organization, we train a lot of GPTs. We use Gemini, etc. And I met, let's say, with a Fortune 100 company recently who wanted to start doing this. And my thing to them was like, hey, look, we can build this out for you, but it doesn't make any sense because it requires the seller to go directly and access this and interact with it. That's not helpful. You need this stuff to be working in the background. Again, that's why I'm a big fan of Showpad Assist in the sense that it's working in the background. The seller doesn't need to think. The seller just has to focus on taking action on what's most important, which is the most valuable parts of selling, and they're empowered with agentic AI in the background. That's the key here. Because then if you go back to, let's say, generic AI and LLMs, you're gonna have this stratification or segmentation between high use sellers who are gonna use it and get the value, and then guys and gals who are not. You want this to be democratized where, hey, this is in the background and everybody's using this.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I just want to kind of double down. Like, the advice here is absolutely prioritize centralized and scalable solutions. So if you are an operator on the call, like, don't feel too bad. You've made a great head start by investing in an org-wide and enterprise-grade AI. Now it's just a matter of making sure that it's built and tuned for those real sales scenarios, so that, you know, when somebody is a field-based seller and they need something, you know, from their phone in between meetings, they want to follow up in the 15 minutes they have in the car, you obviously can't type out an email, at least not safely. Like, how can the AI help you in the real world scenarios that you're in? And then, you know, very much cultivate internal champions and showcase those wins. So again, you know, what Omar was talking about earlier, a lot of times there's a few folks that are really, really accelerating their path to quota by leveraging AI and freeing themselves up to do more revenue generating tasks. So especially if you're investing in an enterprise grade AI, like, find those opportunities to spotlight those sellers and the things that those folks are doing to get ahead, and, you know, shout that from a mountaintop to the rest of the org so that other folks start to follow suit. Because yes, every seller wants to save, you know, 5-10 minutes on every email they write, but it's really all about how does that get me in front of more folks that I can sell to and not in front of my email screen, and how does it help me hit my quota?
And Chris, I want to make a comment specifically for the CFOs out there, because the CFO is often looking at tools and saying like, okay, we got like X amount of enterprise seats for this one tool. We're spending this much every year. Like, what are we getting out of it? I feel like when you adopt these kind of agentic tools, right, you essentially get rid of this like hidden tax that the sales team is paying, which is essentially they're paying with their time and the company's bottom line. I'm going to use myself just as a tiny example that I experienced this week. For me, I'm the main seller in my company, right? And so for me, I don't have agentic AI working in the background yet. We're working on that, right? But if I have more deals, that's so much more emails I have to do, so much more updating the CRM, proposals, follow-up, and everything. And so you can have a rep who has a much bigger territory than somebody else, and they're just getting weighed down by more and more administrative burden. You want it so that as a rep increases the amount of deals they have, they're not getting weighed down by the administrative stuff to manage those deals, right? Because again, at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. The more deals you have in pipeline, the more you're working, the better your forecasting, better your revenue. But you don't want it to like, the more deals that are added, it's associated with more pain in the seller's time. Because like, oh man, if I go from managing 3 deals to 10, how many emails am I sending? How many times I'm going to have to update the CRM, etc., so on and so forth. And again, it's like a double-edged sword. Like, as you're adding to your pipeline, your sellers are getting weighed down more and more and more. And now your pipeline velocity gets like worse. Not because your sales team is worse, it's because like their workload is being added. The one thing that I think people need to think about when it comes to AI tools like Showpad Assist is that these are things that are going to scale your productivity by a lot. And again, at the end of the day, I always tell people this, that from a sales standpoint, you have your business result you're trying to drive to in terms of revenue. You map it to the certain objectives, X amount of meetings, leads, etc., so on and so forth. The only thing you have actual control of and influence is daily activity. Like, that's it. And you need to use things like AI to eliminate all the daily activity that has nothing to do with selling, right? Once you do that, now you go from your sellers having, let's say, in reality, 20 to 30%. By the way, there's a study done on this a long time ago. Medical salespeople spend about 10 to 20% of their actual time selling. Can you imagine that if in SaaS, people had like 10 to 20% of their time selling and everything else is admin? It'd be terrible.
I mean, it's not crazy far off, but I love what you called out there, Omar, with like this idea that the true promise of good AI, agentic AI, you know, forever we've talked about how sales enablement and commercial excellence can help your mid performers perform more like top performers. I think AI has completely flipped that on its head. So you no longer need to worry about making those mid performers better. I mean, sure, you do, but like your bottom performers are always going to be bottom performers. And what you really want to do is, how can I give more territory? How can I give more opportunity to my top performers? Because I know they can go out and execute. So Omar, to your point, if a rep that can normally only handle 3 opportunities at a time because of the admin burden and the bandwidth it requires to work those opportunities, but I have a high degree of confidence they're going to close all 3, what if I can give them 6 or 9 or 12? Like that's the true promise of AI to me. And that's what, as a nice segue, that's what we're seeing the optimizers in the space start to do. So these are the folks that have, invested in an enterprise grade AI that's purpose built for their sellers and are seeing really, really strong adoption. Omar, I know you've talked to a few teams recently that are kind of at least teetering on this edge. So how are you seeing the most advanced sales teams approach AI enabled sales differently than the rest?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing is that they have a level of sophistication about where they're spending their time and the activity that they're doing. And again, it sounds like really simple, but the more clarity you get on where should I be spending my time and what activities am I doing on a daily basis, again, we think about the negative compounding effects of, let's say, doing more and more administrative stuff. If you look at the positive compounding effects of saying, hey, like, all the things that usually used to take a lot of my time, it's being done now, right? So now with all this free time, what am I going to be using it for? Where am I going to be doing? And again, think about this, like the industry should really understand this, because this is exactly what we tell our customers. If you adopt XYZ technology, your efficiency in your procedure will improve from an hour and a half to, let's say, under an hour. And with that, you're going to be able to do like 1 or 2 extra cases a day, and so on and so forth, and that compounds. It's the same thing here. So if your sellers are able to adopt, and at least this is the top performing teams that I've seen, and there's not a lot of them, to be frank, and that's where I think there's a huge opportunity in the industry, is that they're able to use those positive compounding effects to open up more time and use that time a lot more effectively in a much better way. Again, if you have this across a team of 5, 10, 15, 100 sellers, think about the compound effects of that, right? In terms of your pipeline, your forecasting, a lot of things.
Yeah. And I just love where the space is going with all these purpose-built AI-powered tools that are meant to help with these use cases. Obviously, Omar, appreciate all the comments you've made about Showpad Assist, which I'll touch on in a moment here. But we've got our good friends at Acuity MD doing a lot of this, Prep AI, like we talked about, where it's not just a generic, hey, help me do research on this clinic before I walk in, but it's very much contextualized to what you need to know and what you need to do as a result of what's been happening with that account. Even I listened to an interview from Mike Monavukas, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, the CEO over at Acuity. And one of the things that just kind of blew my mind is, like, we talked about this sort of data analysis piece of AI, and he highlighted a story that there's 10,000 physicians that retire every year in the US. And so, everybody kind of has that procedural volume and product usage data that is eventually going to transfer to new docs when those 10,000 retire. But, what if AI in a matter of seconds could tell you, where is this procedure volume likely to go? And is there any affinity to specific products? And even an attack plan for, if affinity is low for products and procedural volume will be high, like attack. So some of these use cases just honestly kind of blow my mind. And I certainly wish when I was first coming up into sales, I had this sort of an AI-driven targeting strategy that could help me spend my time on the right opportunities.
Yeah, and look, like Chris, something I want to mention is that, the outcome that an organization, whether you're, because I see some people I recognize, whether you're in a startup medtech environment or in a scale up or in a strategic, the outcome which you're really aiming for is that you want the reps to be sharper, you want to be faster and focused on, again, high value, high revenue generating actions. That's like all you want their time focused on, right? And I think, like, what I love is, this is why I reached out. I wanted Showpad as a partner for our show. And we're way past our 1 year anniversary, but Showpad's I used to always say that the reps with the best data, the teams with the best data, are going to win. That's what Showpad provided the past, in the past with its platform, right? Now I think moving forward, it's like the best teams that are going to win are the ones that have AI on their side, and more importantly, are able to deploy maximum focus and time on the things that matter most. And I feel like with Showpad Assist and the agentic AI that you guys have built on top of the existing platform that is great already, I mean, it's going to be so powerful. I mean, me personally, like I would personally like buy stock in companies that are scaling and adopting this, you know, because it's just a matter of time in terms of their ability to see those results in the field.
Yeah, well, really appreciate the vote of confidence, Omar. And yeah, that's a great segue into what you've been talking about a bit here with Showpad Assist. Obviously, as we've discussed today, field sellers especially are often just absolutely buried in busy work. And so the problem that we're really trying to solve for, if we go back to that SAFE framework, is, you know, preparing for meetings, digging for content, chasing follow-ups. It creates this admin overload and what we even consider a hidden tax on sellers' time and your company's bottom line. I think you talked about that a bit earlier, Omar. And so that's why we built Showpad Assist. It's the first AI agent purpose-built for field sales. And it's all about completing multi-step tasks while sellers are on the move. So really, Assist helps them show up sharper and gives them the ability to stay focused on customers. It preps sellers with smart briefings. It captures meeting notes while you're in person through voice. It handles instant CRM updates and even follow-ups. And because, like you mentioned, Omar, it's fully embedded in the Showpad enablement operating system, it's grounded in what actually drives performance, which is your brand-approved content, the proven seller workflows that win deals, and real-time buyer engagement data that helps you understand where you should focus your follow-up efforts. This expert context helps sellers always take the next deal-winning action. And so if you're interested in getting priority access to Showpad Assist or learning a bit more, please scan that QR code on the screen, and that'll basically sign you up for more information on our general availability once we get through a private beta that we're going through right now. Lovely. Well, without further ado, let's take some time for us to answer some questions. So drop yours in the Q&A module, and we'll begin. And I think we maybe have a few that have come through from the LinkedIn feed as well.
All right.
All right. So first one is, in your experience, what's the single biggest indicator that an AI-enabled sales initiative is on the right track?
So I think the best. So the question is the best indicator that the AI sales initiative is on the right track, correct?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. This is gonna be a little bit of stream of consciousness, so bear with me. I think that the biggest thing is when you adopt a new tool, you don't just drop the new tool on a rep's desk and expect them to use it. It's really spending time to understand their real world frustrations and putting the rep at the center of strategy. Similar in product management, you put the customer and the customer experience there. So I think it's like less about a technology gap, more about a workflow gap. So like I think a company that goes with that sort of approach when they're rolling it out to say, hey, like, look, our customer, right, or our key adopter is a rep. What's their day-to-day like? What are they struggling with? Where can we take this technology and roll it out so they can see immediate value and benefits? Just you don't take a piece of technology, drop it in a hospital, expect it to be used. You have like clinical there, customer success. You identify a key surgery. You don't just do it with any surgery, right? You identify a key surgery so that the customer and their team feel immediate value. And so I think like that's the big thing. I would say that the best teams and the best success I see is an indicator where they say, hey, we've kind of worked with our reps, we've identified some key areas, we're going to apply this and roll it out. Not doing this massive rollout across all kinds of things. Like even at a strategic, I think it's starting out with adopting a tool like a Showpad Assist and saying, hey, like we talked to our reps, here are the kind of things that we identified that would be huge value adds and quick wins. Because again, it's like a dopamine loop. You want that dopamine to come out, you want them to feel good, and then you kind of go from there, right? And I think the other side of it, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Showpad's customer success team, and this is kind of like one of the things that they do is that they work with these companies internally to say like, here's how you should apply it, and here's how you get the like value right away.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you're spot on. Like, Showpad aside, it's sort of like, we're doing this AI enabled, we're introducing this AI enabled workflow as a means of removing a hurdle that our reps are facing. And so early on, it's like very simple, kind of binary. Like, is this helping or is it not? Of the, kind of one is adoption. Like, are people actually using it or not? And of the people that aren't, and I would survey early and often, like, of the people that are not using it within a week of the launch, why not? Is it an awareness issue? Is it a doubt issue? Is it they tried it and it's not working for them? And start to tackle some of those things. But then look at, okay, of the people that are using it, how effectively have we removed that obstacle that we were trying to remove? And that could be as simple as a survey. That could be as simple as some sort of a kind of gate check on how many physicians are they able to see now per day, now that we've removed some of this admin burden, whatever you want that to be, but some sort of very early stage leading indicator. And then I would start to really look at the lagging indicator. So we kind of assumed if we free up more of a rep's time, they'll see more physicians in a week and their sales volume will go up. Okay, so literally a week or 2 weeks later, are we seeing any noticeable difference in those metrics? And I think this is one of those things where you really want to be on kind of the knife's edge of, is this working or not, and where do we need to tweak? Because like Omar said throughout, like this stuff moves so fast that if we just let it sit for a month or two, we might kind of miss the boat on that y-axis, right? The human excitement about the value of AI. But if we can stay ahead of it and stay really sharp to the impact that it's having, and we socialize that impact across the org, you're going to see a really, really great flywheel effect.
And something, do you mind if can I take, I know we have some other questions. Something also I want to share for the senior leaders. So I'm talking to not only the directors of sales, but chief commercial officers, VPs, etc. I've talked about this many times where we're seeing this convergence into healthcare, right? Big tech has fiduciary responsibility to grow, Apple, Microsoft, etc. So like, aside from big tech getting more into healthcare, you're also seeing tech investors getting involved in healthcare. And so that's going to bring a certain level of expectations, right? And so as a leader, if you're raising money, right, you have to be able to speak very confidently and with a certain level of sophistication to an investor, to a board, that, hey, when you give us a 10, 20, 50, $100 million check and we're going to go build a commercial team, you have to be able to speak confidently about what kind of tools you're going to be using and how are you going to be using those tools. What happens when you bring over a couple of key hires that are going to be, let's say, great sellers? Well, how are you going to scale those capabilities across the organization? Like, this is where, again, using agentic AI, using platforms like Showpad Assist really help, because it kind of gives you not only a guidepost about how you're going to do that, but more importantly, the data that you can speak intelligently to the board about, like, these are the things that we're doing. If somebody goes up on your board and they look at your pipeline and they're going to ask you about, like, what are you going to do about increasing pipeline velocity? What's the question how are you going to answer that question? You can't answer that using old, outdated approaches from the past, So I think this is also, like, in my opinion, like a career risk mitigator. Like I can tell you right now, I've been approached by board members for marketers, that is, and I've actually discouraged certain companies from hiring certain marketers because I'm like, I know them, I've spoken to them in the past. I look what they're doing now, like they haven't adopted AI tools. They haven't adopted the latest approaches in marketing. Like, what are you going to get from them?
Yeah. I've heard that saying a lot, where it's like AI is not going to replace your job, but somebody using AI will. I think that's true. All right. Well, I think we've got time for one more question. So it's a nice segue into what you were just talking about, which is, beyond the efficiency gains, what's the most significant long-term impact on a company's sales culture when they successfully adopt AI?
Oof. I think the most important impact it's going to have on sales culture is elevating a seller to a higher level of thinking and analysis. Because when you get rid of like all these other things, all that's left is the ability for the seller to enhance their their skill set when it comes to managing those relationships. I think, like, again, no matter whether you're in medical sales or in SaaS, etc., like a lot of sales is relationship based, but there's certain level of sophistication of how you manage those relationships. How do you drive customer success? How do you take that customer success from one account and leverage it to open up a new market? And so I think, like, when using AI, sales teams are going to have a lot of things that they used to have to spend time on in the past and waste energy on peeled off. When those things are peeled off, their time is going, they're going to get back a lot of time. And from that time, they're able to put a lot more focus on attention on the most important things that matters. And so as a sales culture, I mean, if I think about this across, like, I'll use like one of our clients, you know, that we have, that they have a sales team, I think, of 10 or 15 people. So adopting something like this allows that sales team to start focusing on their own internal training on things like persuasion, pricing, negotiations, all these different things. And you level set and elevate the entire team to there, because now you have the time and energy and resources to focus on those things. Versus when you're doing all these other things manually, you don't have that time, you don't have that focus. And then that's how you end up with these huge differences in terms of, like, sellers that are like crushing their quota, and then everybody else who's like struggling, and you can't figure out why that is, and you can't really implement like a strategy that's going to like scale those results.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would even just add, when we think about the relationship between a sales manager, a frontline sales leader, and their reps, like, one of the most frustrating things that has to happen is that back and forth around CRM updates and other data entry and follow-up timeliness. And, like, that's the absolute last thing I want to be talking about with my sellers. And it's also the last thing they want to be talking about with me. So if we can sort of automate some of that data entry, automate some of that follow-up, there's no longer that awkward conversation, that awkward dance happening between the sales leader and the seller. So what does that lead to is a more trusting and value-based relationship, more, you know, comfort and the time that you're spending together being valuable. And ultimately, like, yes, we're going to remove a lot of that sort of admin tax that frustrates sellers and causes them to burn out. But I think a big part of that is, like, the pressure they get from their sales leader to do the admin tasks. So if we can form better relationships that are more value-driven between seller, sales leader, and above, that's another huge win here from a sales culture standpoint, in my opinion.
Yeah, and can I add one more to this, Chris? So, yeah, I don't want to get into like the details of it, but like, I know this week, like, you guys had a really big announcement with the with a merger essentially with Big Tick Can, so you're adding more capabilities to what you guys are doing. I think another, like, sort of a big mistake is that I know a lot of companies will watch this, and what might happen is they end up saying, okay, let's, you know, buy a bunch of like sort of generic disconnected tools. And then that's kind of how you end up in that operator quadrant, where you have like all this great tech, you spend a lot of money, but then you have very little adoption. I think this is the value of like saying, okay, we're going to adopt like one key platform, in this case, like Showpad, which has that content management, has that training, they have that agentic AI, and then we can roll this out piece by piece on different areas of our sales force and marketing team, but using the same platform. It's the same thing, like, let's say with like a really great CRM, we love HubSpot, right? And so when we adopt HubSpot for clients, we don't just like roll out all the features across the organization. It's a platform. And so like we start off with, let's say, the email tool for sellers or certain pipeline things, right? And you keep adding on, but it's all in one platform. It's not like a bunch of tools put together as a Frankenstein system. And I think that's the big thing going into the AI world, is adopting one key platform that'll help you roll out this, and more importantly, that's going to grow and mature with you and your sales team and marketing. So again, I love Showpad. It's not like one little tool, right? It's a platform that starts growing with your organization. So there are things that I think the Showpad platform and Showpad Assist are going to be great for an established sales team with like over 100 sellers or 1,000 sellers, etc. And then there's going to be the same platform, but for like a smaller team that has, like, let's say 3 to 5 seller, right? I think that's the most important thing, is like not getting excited and then saying, hey, Like, let's go teach our team how to use ChatGPT and then uses everything. You're going to end up in that operator quadrant where you spend a lot of time and money, and you have all these disconnected tools that like nobody's using.
Well, appreciate all the insight, Omar. This is fantastic. We're running out of time, so we'll wind down from the questions. And just want to say thank you all for being here and for submitting some of those questions. I think there was a couple we didn't get to answer, so we'll make sure to follow up with those that asked. But what we discussed here is really just the tip of the iceberg. So later today, everyone that attended will receive the detailed email with their assessment results, including an actionable game plan for your sales organization's AI path. And just thank you again for everyone for attending, and Omar for your invaluable expertise here.
It was a pleasure, Chris. Thank you. I want to say thank you and the Showpad team. I really enjoyed this.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who'd really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.